You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 136.
On this episode of the Small and Supercharged podcast, I'm so excited to be joined by this lady. I've had the pleasure of, we did a lunch and learn together, and actually when I won my award, which was, I have actually got this just next to me now, I'm just showing Emma, she presented it virtually, obviously, and said the loveliest things. And I'm just delighted that today we've got Emma Jones, who is the founder of Enterprise Nation, on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Emma.
Thank you so much for having me. You have built up a great following on this podcast, so it's an honour for me to be your guest.
Well, I'm excited. And actually, I mentioned it to a couple of friends, and I said, I'm interviewing Emma and they went, no. And I went, I am really. You've got quite a few fans already. So, and I know by the end of this, you're going to have even more. So can you tell us all about you and how you kind of got to found Enterprise Nation?
Sure. Even though that makes me feel very old, because it started about 20 years ago, this story, but don't worry, I won't take too long in telling it. But yes, in brief, went to university, did law and Japanese, because I'd been to an international college to do A-levels, which had opened up my eyes to kind of a whole world of opportunity and a world of people, actually. So studied law and Japanese, and the reason why I say that is that degree choice influenced my first and only ever job. So when I left university, I joined a firm called Arthur Andersen, which at the time was the world's largest professional services organisation. So it was one of what was called the Big Five accounting firms. So I joined Anderson's in London and then moved with them to Leeds and then Manchester. Spent an incredible 5 years working there. And by the time I'd left Anderson's, I'd set up what was called an inward investment unit. So I set up a team that helped Arthur Andersen clients from all over the world decide where they would locate when they invested in the UK. And having spent 5 years at Anderson's, the year was 2000, which was the height of the dot-com boom. And I suppose I'd always wanted to start my own business. I was brought up by a mum who ran restaurants when we were growing up. So I grew up with self-employment just like all around me. So at the height of the dot-com boom, I guess I was really motivated to think, well, actually, I think I could start a business out of doing what I love, which at the time was inward investment. So I left Anderson's to start a company in the year 2000. That business was called techlicate.com. It put the inward investment process online. Incredibly exciting time to start a business, and maybe we'll go into that, because I learned a whole amount in the space of about 15 months, which was the time it took for us to start and grow the business. And 15 months into the company, we had a call from a business that wanted to acquire us. So essentially the techlicate.com story was that within 2 years we'd started, grown, and then we sold the business. So you can learn a lot in that kind of time frame. And having sold Techlicate, I had what's called a lock-in clause. So I had to work for the company that acquired us, which was a business called Tenon. And as soon as my lock-in clause was up, I essentially left to start Enterprise Nation. And very briefly, Enterprise Nation started out, I really hate this term, but it is how it started. It started as a lifestyle business. So it was me mainly doing consulting work for what were called regional development agencies. So these were like government bodies in lots of regions across the UK. And I was consulting with them on how they could create the conditions for enterprise to flourish in their area. So it started off like that. It was like that probably for about 6 or 7 years. So great income coming in. I was hiring one other person, so the margin is great. And then essentially I decided I think it's time to grow this business and really scale it. So Enterprise Nation today, we're 27 people. We have a platform that's welcomed over 500,000 small businesses this year. Of course, it's been a pretty intense year. And our job now is essentially to, as quickly as possible, connect small businesses with all the support they need, and to connect advisors who can offer that support to small businesses who need it. So that is the short story as to how we got to today.
No, that is amazing. I was going to actually, my next point on here, well, this will go out at the early part of 2021 in January. But 2020, what a year it's been generally for everybody, but from your point of view as well, How have you seen a kind of increase in traffic? How has that sort of looked for you, and what point did it really start to ramp up?
Yeah, it's been amazing. And in fact, we took investment on in 2017, an angel investor called Richard Harpin. I actually sent my end of year note to them earlier this week. And I said, you'll remember that in the January board meeting, the figures that I was giving, essentially, we have more than doubled those figures. So the traffic to the site has increased by over 200%. We said that we would have events this year to attract 25,000 attendees. We've had 50,000 plus attendees with 510 events, which of course have all been online. So it's just been incredible. And, we've been through lots of phases this year. The team have been amazing in terms of just really insanely working to support this huge amount of traffic coming onto the site. And we've been through lots of phases. There was the panic at the outset where businesses were just like, how am I going to keep the money coming in? So kind of just lots of businesses coming to us to say, what schemes can I access? From where do I get money? Then we went into a slightly more positive kind of phase where businesses were saying, okay, I've sorted my finances. Now I need to adapt. And so can you help me with all the digital skills and training that I need to do that? Then we kind of took a dip again when sort of Brexit started to re-emerge, the lockdown started to happen. So we've been in this kind of ebb and flow situation throughout the whole of the year. But of course, across the whole of the year, businesses have needed to navigate their way through it. So therefore, they have looked for support. And I think the thing that's been most important for me, and that I've tried to relay to the team, who of course have all worked from home, so I kind of haven't seen too much of them this year, is we just have to show that we are here and ready to support any small business that's looking for that support. So it has been incredibly intense, but it's really interesting, Ria. I know we're talking at the end of 2020. I kind of thought, would I feel exhausted at the end of this year in terms of what we've been through? But if anything, I kind of feel even more energized because the work hasn't stopped yet. Going into the first quarter of 2021, businesses are still going to be thinking, can I open? How do I trade? How do I keep reaching my customers? Dare I say, how do they make the most of the opportunity of people who've been saving money and are ready to kind of go out and spend? So I think we've got another year of this quite intense support requirement coming up. And my job is to kind of prepare the business so we're ready for that, but also, of course, to make sure I've got a happy and motivated team who've got the energy to deliver. So yeah, it's been pretty incredible, but I don't think we're quite at the end of it just yet.
No, I have to say, I think you're absolutely right. But and it must be quite interesting for you to see, as you say, that continually changing need. So going from we can't trade, we've got no money, what are we going to do? To hopefully, as people have kind of, they say, evolved, pivoted, thought, well, I need to do something. How can I make this work with all the regulations and the legal requirements of the various lockdowns and things like that? How can I make this work for me? And have you also seen, in addition to those businesses evolving and changing, a lot of people who perhaps hadn't even thought about starting a business at the beginning of 2020, finding out more from you and making that jump?
Yeah, so that's been one of the most incredible things, actually, is this boost in entrepreneurship that we've seen. And loads of journalists have been in touch with us and kind of said, why on earth are people starting businesses? Because in the media, of course, they're reporting it's recession, the high street is closing down, Arcadia is going bust, then it's House of Fraser, blah, blah, blah. And so they're kind of like, why are people starting up? So what we have seen, and we are distinctly seeing record numbers of people who are saying, now is the time to start a business. And there's a few factors as to why this is happening. So there's one element which is called, well, it's referred to as necessity entrepreneurship. So this is where people start a business because they have no other option than to go self-employed or start a company, even though that's only the minority of what we're seeing. So mainly what we're seeing is more positive, what's called opportunity entrepreneurship. So of course, during lockdown, we profiled so many new businesses who had spotted a gap in the market. They were looking for a product to be delivered to their home. They couldn't find it. And therefore they decided, well, in which case I'll start a business on the back of it. What many of those businesses are now thinking is, were they purely a lockdown product, or can they continue that business kind of hopefully when the UK gets a little bit more back to normal. But one other thing that's been really fascinating to see, and it doesn't hugely surprise me, and in fact, I'm really kind of gratified that it's happening, is at the point when the UK had sort of 9 million people on furlough, many of those people will, in normal times, they would have worked a day job and had what's called as a side hustle. So run their business at nights and weekends. And of course, when they were put on furlough, they then had full time to work on what was their side hustle. So I think a big result of what we're seeing is people having more time available to put into what was a side business, a hobby, a passion. And what that's now turning into is new companies being formed at Companies House, record numbers of people applying for startup loans. So it's absolutely amazing to see. And of course, it's not being reported too much in the press because the press is still covering, the rather kind of more sad and fatal news that's kind of going on. But what we have definitely seen is that, in the light of this huge challenge, many British people have responded by saying, well, in which case this is the time to become my own boss. And again, this is where it comes back to support. Lots of evidence to show if you get support within your first 12 months, you're more likely to be a strong and sustainable business. So again, back to our job at Enterprise Nation, we have to be there for the businesses who've struggled through 2020 and still need that support to figure out how to keep trading. But we also need to be there for those new startups who say, well, actually, customers are still out there. Customers are buying. They're just buying in a different way. How do I make the most of that? So, yeah, from out of very strange circumstances, kind of many new beginnings can come.
Yeah, and I have to say, a really good point there. I really do wish that the media would add the odd little bit of good news in, because I think we all need a bit of hope. And seeing someone do well gives everybody hope that they can do well. I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, Jeremy Vine tweeted yesterday, actually asking people, he said, I'm feeling really down. I want people to come back with kind of reasons to be positive. And actually the one that I replied with was record numbers of people are starting new businesses. And it's funny, I've reflected on this in the past couple of days, because again, just for your listeners who are listening, at the start of 2021, we are currently in the period where London and the South East is in tier 4. People aren't going to see family at Christmas. So of course, everybody has got morose again. And one ritual that I do every morning is on the BBC, I read all the covers of the newspapers just to get the mood of the nation, to see what all the headlines are. And of course, for the past 4 days, it has been incredibly downbeat. It's been, we can't get through the French borders. This mutant virus is now across the UK. It's really, really somber. And I am optimistic by nature as a person, so I very rarely put anything on social that's not positive. And I have to say, I've reflected over the past couple of days, and I'm still putting out positive kind of pieces and kind of news items, but part of me kind of thinks I'm not quite sure people are feeling in the mood to even be open to positivity at the moment. So I think everyone has to sort of be careful of the mood of the moment. But I hope we come out of it, and again, there's many great things on the horizon, transition, and so businesses getting the clarity over what a new trading prospect could look like. We're all looking forward to that. And of course, everyone's kind of looking forward to the vaccine and just being able to kind of get back up on their feet. So there are some incredible business stories. And I guess we're quite fortunate at Enterprise Nation, because in the main, what we've heard this year is the stories of new startups, existing businesses really quickly innovating, dare I say, online sellers who've done pretty well and had kind of like a really phenomenal year. And I think because we tend to hear that, we tend to operate in what is a positive environment, despite the fact we're very aware that if you're in hospitality, it hasn't been quite so rosy. In fact, it hasn't been rosy at all. But yeah, hopefully we can come out of 2020 and move into a more positive period and time.
No, and I think that, I know I've seen a lot of businesses really pivot. So, this time last year, if someone said, I'm going to set up a business making face coverings, anyone would have probably looked at that and gone, really? Okay. Whereas now there have been some people who have created beautiful face coverings that people obviously now have got to wear them, and their businesses have absolutely rocketed. People, you see lots of distilleries who have moved into making alcohol hand products. Whereas again, if this time last year someone had said, you know what you should do with your gin, you should make your gin setup, you should make alcohol hand wash, sanitize, you kind of go, okay. Whereas actually some businesses have really pivoted incredibly well to really get that need, as you say, online, that surged. How can you fulfill people's needs and desires in the new climate we're in? And there have just been some incredible stories. And I know what you mean about the hospitality traders, obviously had an awful time. But then you do also see some businesses, sort of pubs and restaurants, who have really aced their takeaway model and really gone all out on that, haven't you, as well?
Well, this is the thing. And actually, I saw a great, I really wanted to take a picture of it, but I hadn't got my phone. So the other day, I live in West London. And as I say, we've kind of gone into tier 4, which probably means a lot of people now are having to stay home this Christmas. And I walked around the corner the other day, and there is a pop-up outfit selling Christmas trees. And I was just like, that is absolutely brilliant. They've clearly recognised there's a whole load of people in this area who thought they were going to be travelling out. Now they're staying home. They're going to need a Christmas tree. So incredible kind of views of entrepreneurship. But one of the other things that has become probably kind of a big observation for me this year, and we could have a whole podcast just talking about the philosophical debate side of this, is because businesses have needed to pivot and have needed to offer takeaways and quickly reach customers online, the digital platforms that enable that have also, of course, had a very good COVID. And dare I say, these platforms are our clients at Enterprise Nation. So we have as sponsors the likes of Amazon, Uber, Facebook, Instagram, and we've delivered some incredible programs for them this year. And I think this is something that's going to become ever more important, which is almost a fundamental need for every startup and small business owner to understand, how do I run my business on these digital platforms? And, as I say, the philosophical debate is, does that mean it puts more power in the hands of these kind of huge tech companies? Maybe so, but our view of this is that it's a huge entrepreneurship enabler. So if you can trade on Amazon Marketplace, you can set up a business within 5 days. If you go on Instagram, you're reaching your customers and you can immediately get sales. As you say, restaurants can pivot using Uber straight into a takeaway. So they're huge enabling technologies. And of course, they've had a very powerful role to play this year.
Yes, and I do understand what you mean about that. Are we giving more power to the big, the bigger tech companies? But I think what you said as well about, we have the privilege of being able to use these platforms. If this had happened not even that many years ago, it would have been a completely different situation. At least there is the opportunity there to get on board with all these different places and spread your risk, but also reach the people that you need to reach. And obviously I'm a big fan of social media, as I'm one of your She-Me's business trainers, but I just think the ability that we have to reach our target customer whenever we like, algorithm dependent, is incredible. And we couldn't do that until not that long ago, really.
And of course, the other thing is, it's reaching your customers not just in the UK, but worldwide. And I think this is one thing, it comes back to my sort of positivity. This is one thing that I've been watching with interest. And Liz Truss, who is the Secretary of State for Trade, I saw the other day that she's kind of been voted, there's a blog called Conservative Home, which is kind of very influential sort of within politics. And they voted her kind of the best performing minister, because they said that, kind of over the past 7 months, she's just really quietly gone about her job. And her job was to go away and strike trade deals with lots of countries. And actually, I retweeted her the other day, because I think Mexico was the 58th trade deal that she's done in the past 7 months. And she's kind of done this and no one really knows that she's done it. But every time I look at her striking another trade deal, I think that's opening up more opportunities for small businesses. And so I do think, and I hope this is not being too optimistic, I think there is potentially a really bright future for small British businesses to trade with the world. And again, it comes back to these digital platforms. If you trade on Amazon, you are immediately opened up to global customers. If you have a shop on Facebook, you are immediately opened up to billions of customers all around the world. So I think learning these skills does become fundamental for the small businesses, but the rewards are, as you say, you get to reach out to your customers locally, but you also reach this whole new world of opportunity.
And do you think moving through into, well, probably beyond Q1, definitely for 2021, the things that we've learned in 2020 are going to kind of change how we function forever?
Oh, totally. And again, and at the end of this, you'll be like, oh, for goodness sake, Emma, can't you say something negative?
No, we need positivity. I'm all in.
And this is where I come back to the positives. If I take, there's three things that every small business owner I know, including myself, I'm the founder of a business, so kind of put myself in this camp. There's three things that I think that we have all learnt over this year that will absolutely put us in better stead for next year. So one is the importance of good finance and good financial management. So dare I say, kind of companies that came into COVID financially quite weak, and maybe the ones that haven't made it through. So every business owner I know, I think, is now more acutely aware of cash coming in and cash going out than they were before March. So financial fitness is better. This digital adoption that we've spoken about has been absolutely huge. And that's not just using platforms to reach customers. Of course, any of us with team members have now adopted Teams, Zoom to communicate with our teams because they're all working from their homes. So we have all become more productive through using these digital technologies. And the third thing that I just think is probably more important than both the financial and the digital side is the mental resilience of founders that has just set in. And again, so many business owners I'm speaking to essentially is saying to me, if I've managed to get through 2020, I can get through anything.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the mental attitude to keep going is one of the biggest, I guess, kind of objectives that a business owner has to keep on working on, is just that resilience to just get up every day, and no matter what's happening in the business, you just keep on going. And I think this year has had a profound impact on the mental strength of entrepreneurs, and that can only do us good. So if for those businesses who can just make it through to that kind of first quarter of 2021, you'll come out of it financially stronger because you're more aware of your finances, digitally much stronger because you're using tools you never were before, and mentally, I defy anyone to say that they're not feeling mentally more resilient just because they've made it through until now.
No, I couldn't agree more. One of the you've done lots of amazing things at Enterprise Nation over the last 12 months, but one that I think is a really big one is your Lunch and Learn series. And I've taken part in a few of those. I've been interviewed on, which has been amazing. And I've watched a lot as well with loads of different people. So how did that come about, and what's your sort of feelings on it?
Yeah, well, that one I really can talk to, because I'm not being funny. All of the great ideas in Enterprise Nation tend to come from the team, but this one came from me. So I can definitely talk to Lunch and Learn. So this was in response. We had gone into lockdown. We had launched our COVID support hub, and I just kind of sat in my home office and I thought, wow, every business owner I know has suddenly been sent home. I know many business owners operate from home anyway, so even if that wasn't different, what was different is just the complete unknown of what was about to come. And I thought, surely what business owners will want is practical advice on just tell me what I need to do. I need to understand what's happening, but also would want some kind of element of routine in their daily lives. So practical experts, companionship, and just something that you knew would be on every day from 12 to 12:30. So Lunch and Learn, and for the first 8 weeks, I hosted it every single day. So Holly, who you've mentioned, Ria, she was kind of my girl backstage. She kind of set them up. We had experts on every day, and I hosted it every single day. Learned a huge amount, actually, from hearing all of these experts. But what I wanted it to give for the audience was, yes, come on and learn something. Hopefully it's done in a friendly format, so you kind of feel it's quite a nice environment. But critically, we will be here every day from 12 to 12:30 without fail. So it gives you something that you can just put in the diary and work your day around it. And I have to say, it's been incredible. We've had thousands of people who've come on and listened. We've done an ebook on the back of it. We're continuing all the way through 2021. So it's become kind of a bit of a staple now of what we do. And it's so lovely when we get messages from people who say, I came onto a lunch and learn and now I'm doing this. So that's always really gratifying. So yeah, it's going to keep going. But that was why we started it, is that practical expertise, give that access, but just give people something as a sense of routine in what were crazy days at the start of all of this happening.
You've had big sign-ups, haven't you, for some of these? I know obviously it goes up and down depending on everything, actually, from what news has been released to the weather to kids are off school, but you've had massive sign-ups for some of them.
Yeah, so well, on average every week we have about 1,500 to 2,000 people who sign up each week. And in fact, Ria, you did one a couple of weeks ago, and I know I tweeted about it because I think you were on 473 sign-ups or something just for yours. And what we have definitely seen, and I think I've put this actually in your tweet, anything to do with social media and digital marketing have much higher sign-ups. So all of our lunch and learns go through Eventbrite. So I look at Eventbrite every week just to kind of see the figures, so you can see what's working, what people are liking. And anything that was about Instagram, Facebook, digital marketing, SEO were always the most popular lunch and learns. Less so ones around firing people. We did have to cover that. And I think that just is reflective of the Enterprise Nation community, that most of our members tend not to have people in their team. So kind of HR was not so much an issue, but yeah, the digital marketing ones were off the scale in terms of registration. So hopefully people will still want that next year. And of course, what we have to do is we have to be very responsive as a business. So if we can see that lunch and learn figures are dropping, then of course maybe we just assess it and say maybe hopefully people have found events elsewhere and they kind of don't need that routine. But until we see the demand stopping, we'll just keep going.
That's amazing. That's very exciting to anyone listening. Definitely get on board with that. And we will have the contacts at the end. So do keep listening. What's been one of the biggest highs for the Enterprise Nation, or your own kind of journey to where you are now?
From this year or just in general?
I think just generally, but whatever you fancy.
Well, I have to say, things that give me a sense of high and a sense of achievement, and I don't mean to kind of for this to sound naff in any way, but it is when we hear from businesses in terms of how we've helped them. So this week, for instance, we have a chap called Dan Martin who not only writes for us, so he's a freelance writer for us, but he's also what's called our local leader for Bristol. So we have this amazing network of local leaders who host meetups in their locality. And every month we have a call with all the local leaders and we kind of say to them, tell us what you're hearing, what's sentiment like. And Dan sent a note to everyone in Enterprise Nation actually the other day. And he said, I've just done my final local meetup of the year. And he said, and the local leaders have had it this year because, again, they've had people who've come to their meetups who are at their wits' end and not knowing what to do. The meetups have become such an incredible lifeline for mentally helping founders, as well as kind of saying, oh, here's a good accountant, or have you tried doing this? And so Dan sent this note and he said one of his members whose business was really struggling at the beginning of the year has since taken part in something that we've run this year called the Amazon Small Business Accelerator. That gave him the confidence to launch his own website. He then got a contract on the back of that. He's now picked himself up. And I was just on this incredible story, kind of reading this kind of, journey that this man has took. And for me, I kind of thought, wow, if Enterprise Nation has helped to make that happen, that's the thing that kind of gives us all the motivation to keep on going. So as I say, I don't want it to sound naff, but the biggest high that we can ever get, and it's probably kind of, our adrenaline rush every time we see it and hear it, is essentially someone coming and saying, because of Enterprise Nation, this has happened. And just as a final one on that, just because I saw it this morning, because of this project we've been working on with Amazon, somebody sent me a link to the Amazon blog, and Amazon have a very popular blog called Day One, and there's a post on there around entrepreneurs that have done well this year. And one of them is a great guy who we've helped for the past couple of years, called Tim Rundle-Wood, and he runs a candle shop called Twoodle. And I guess he, for me, is the epitome of what we're trying to achieve. So Tim got to know Enterprise Nation when we ran a program called Clicks and Mortar. And this was in 2019. We were opening up physical shops. We were filling them with online sellers to give them an opportunity to test trade. So I met a very timid Tim. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But in our first shop in Manchester, he rocked up the day before we opened, set up his unit, and he was really timid. And I said to him, tell me about your business. And he said, I've never done anything like this before. I'm really nervous about it. Anyway, he then did 3 other pop-ups with us. He then has done online training. He's been to loads of our events. And about 3 months ago, he opened his own shop in Spitalfields, and he's been promoted everywhere. And I'm just like, for me, I'm kind of like, wow, you know, we just have to do that times a million times. And, you know, that's everything that we're working towards, is how can we do what we've done for someone like Tim in terms of connecting with an accountant, help him with lots of PR, give him the experience so he's got the confidence to open his shop. How can we do that times a million other small business owners? So if we can keep doing that, we'll keep getting our highs.
Oh, definitely. And what about from your personal point of view? You received an MBE. How did that feel? That must have been amazing.
It is lovely to have recognition for what you do. I have a view on the honour system, which is, and I've never said this publicly, but here we go, which is that, dare I say, some people work to receive an honour,
yep.
And other people work, and in their work, they happen to be recognised with an honour. And I would like to think that I fall into the second camp, is that, you know, I do work hard. I have I haven't had a relationship for many years because I love the work that I do. You know, my team is like a family, and so we are all incredibly committed to it. It is very nice when you then receive that recognition for kind of what you're doing. So it was great. And I think it was a few years ago, and my mum, dad and brother came to the palace because they were doing in-person ceremonies at that time. So again, it's just kind of nice that you can share that recognition with family members, kind of with the team. But yeah, it's not why I do it. You know, I do the job to hopefully help small businesses, but it's lovely to get that recognition for hopefully us doing the job well.
And I have to say, obviously this is a podcast, so it's just the audio, but when I asked Emma what her high was, her whole face lit up when she was talking about these amazing businesses she's helped. And when I said about the MBE, it was kind of a, oh, and that, but in a very, which really does prove, as you say, you're so driven and passionate about what you do, that any accolade is definitely nice to have, but not the reason that you do the thing. In terms of lows of your business journey, is there one of those that sort of stands out?
Oh, loads. Oh yeah, lots. Yeah, I really have had a lot, many times where I've kind of thought, is this the right thing that I should be doing? Because this is really, really hard. And it's mainly when you're scaling a business, it's not mainly, it's almost all when you're growing a business. So I mentioned that kind of when Enterprise Nation was first launched, you can't see them, but I've got a whole massive bookshelf here. I wrote books. I lived in a lovely home. I kind of did this work, and it was a great kind of sort of, as I say, kind of profit margin on it. When you decide to grow a business, kind of in a way, all of that goes out the window. You know, you're hiring people, you're moving on to bigger contracts. I have made lots of bad decisions when it comes to hiring people. So I think my first real low in Enterprise Nation was my first bad hire, actually. So I made a bad hire. Because I was out of the business, busy doing business development, I didn't notice it was a bad hire probably until a bit too late. So I kind of came back into the business 6 months on from this hire, and I was like, wow, what is happening in my business? This is not right. So that was a low situation because I had to exit that person from the business, which is always a difficult thing to do. So I had to get coaching around how I did that. But yeah, I've had lots of, as I say, kind of times where it's been really hard, and you have to, at those times, you have to just question, well, you've just got to dig deep. And all the advice I give to other founders actually who are going through this is, or have gone through it, etc., is you just have to bring yourself back to why you do what you do. And again, if anyone kind of ever asks me, do I have a daily ritual? I only have one daily ritual, which I've completely copied from Steve Jobs, that he quite famously, each morning when he was brushing his teeth, he would look at himself in the mirror and he would say to himself, if this was your final day on earth, are you doing the job you should be doing? So if this was your final day on earth, are you doing the job you should be doing? And I ask myself that every day. And I went through a phase of just kind of thinking, I'm not quite sure this is the job that I should be doing. It's hard. The team energy isn't right. We're not winning clients, whatever the reason was. And of course, if that's not working for you, then you have to just do things to correct it. But at the end of the day, you've got to go back to, why did you start a business in the first place? And, as I've said, I am absolutely driven to help all of these small businesses, especially at the moment, figure out how they can get support to keep growing. There's 5 million plus small businesses in the UK. This year we've helped 500,000, so we're still nowhere close to helping all of them. And then of course, a big ambition we do have at Enterprise Nation is there's 5 million businesses in the UK, but of course there's millions more outside of the UK. So one thing I'm really keen to do is, and we're starting next year, we're expanding into Ireland, but we're really keen to kind of start to look at what we can do outside of the UK. But this is where, when you're coming back to those low moments, you absolutely will have them as you grow a business. And it's kind of up to you as to whether you want to get through them. And I think just with all the lows that I've had, which, as I say, have mainly just been, this is really hard. Do I want to continue spending the rest of my life doing this? And then, of course, you just pick yourself up out of it and you respond to yourself with, well, yeah, it may be hard, but I'm going to keep going. So yeah, definitely had lots of lows, but hopefully learned a lot from them and still here today.
Absolutely. And if you could give a few tips to anyone listening to this who's got a small business they want to scale, or maybe they're just feeling a bit lost at the moment, have you got any kind of top tips for them that have really helped the people that you deal with?
Yeah, I guess top tips for scaling a business is, I really feel it's all around people. And a big role model for me when I first started Enterprise Nation, and this is a slightly strange role model because she then went to jail, but was a US entrepreneur called Martha Stewart. And again, I've got so many books about Martha Stewart on this bookshelf. So she started this amazing business fair. She became a big homemaker in the US, and she built this incredible empire out of writing books and coming up with products that kind of made your home beautiful. And in reading all the things that I read about her, so much of her story was she started the business. She did so much of it herself. It was around her and her home. And I guess I kind of started thinking, I don't need people to help me do this. I can just do it on my own. And so one piece of advice I'd have to anyone who wants to scale a business is you definitely can't do it on your own. So a big mantra we have at Enterprise Nation that we offer to any small business who wants to listen is this concept of focus on what you do best and outsource the rest. And so the thing that I love to do at Enterprise Nation is business development. I love kind of looking at our strategy and then saying, right, how can we bring in the income that will help us deliver that? But therefore, what that means is my weaker points are operations, technology, marketing. And of course, at the beginning, you do all of those things. But as the business grows, you have to focus on what you do best and outsource the rest to other people. And at the start, I'm not saying hire those people full time, maybe have them as contractors. But as the business grows, you're going to want to hire those people in full time. So I think a piece of advice for anyone who wants to scale is recognize that people will help you get there. And then, of course, once you've hired those people, you want to build this kind of really motivating environment in which to work. And I think I took way too long to understand the value of people, which probably slowed this business scaling actually, but you kind of never too late to learn, and I've definitely learned it now. So I would say that if you're scaling, kind of go into it with a mindset of it is going to be tough, but people will help me, and how do I get better at doing that? And just for anyone actually at any stage, I would say never stop learning. Of course, there's so much stuff online now. When I started Techlicate, as I say, kind of 20 odd years ago, I know this makes me sound very old, but there wasn't much online about how to start and scale a business. There were no podcasts. There weren't people blogging about their experiences. And of course, now you can follow influencers, you can read books. And it's interesting, we're at quite an interesting point with Enterprise Nation that we're looking to build more of a marketplace function into our platform to better connect small businesses with advisors. And I am obsessing at the moment on listening to a great podcast called Two-Sided, which is all around how you build a marketplace business. I'm following everyone I can on social media who's got a view on this. So you never get to the stage where you can't learn more about how to kind of keep on growing. So I would say scale with people in mind, keep on learning. And anyone who's kind of feeling a little bit low at the moment, I would just say go back to that point of dig deep as to why you started the business. And if you still feel passionate about that reason as to why you started, that will get you through anything. If you've lost that passion a little, maybe kind of step out of the business, go and do something else and see if that kind of comes back. But kind of dig deep and stay rooted in why you did what you did.
I guess if you're on the kind of edge of thinking, well, should I start a new business? I've had this really great idea, but I'm just not sure. I guess that's also quite a good thing to hopefully push you over the edge into doing it as well. You really love it.
Well, and of course, and I will never forget interviewing two guys. This was years ago. They'd started a business. One was a property developer and the other was an architect. And this sounds ridiculous, but their real love in life was jelly. And they started this business called Jellymongers, which was essentially creating incredible buildings out of jelly. So they did St. Paul's Cathedral, they did the Wobbly Bridge, they did the Gherkin in jelly. They're now called Bumpers and Par. They've become this incredible food gastronomy company, amazing business. And I always remember calling them up in the early days. And one of the founders said to me, he said, every day I still have to pinch myself for the fact I'm getting paid to do what I love. And for me, that's kind of when you know you've got it right. If you're kind of like, wow, I'm actually getting paid to do this thing that I love, then of course the hours that you put in never really feel like work. So definitely if you're starting a business, base it on what you love to do. But also, and back to this point of media commentators are questioning why are so many people starting businesses, times like this can be great times to start because, dare I say, there's a lot of churn. So I know this isn't a great point, but some businesses aren't surviving. That creates opportunities for new businesses to start. Technology is making it easier to start on a budget. If anyone's looking for shop places right now, start a business, you can get assets really cheap. So it can be kind of a really good time to start. And I think people will still feel nervous, but there's so much support out there to kind of help anyone do it that hopefully it kind of, that will give somebody the confidence. Lots of other people doing it, loads of people out there to support me. And hey, I can do this, you know, without spending too much money to get going.
Absolutely. And that leads us beautifully to where people can find out about Enterprise Nation, because the great thing is that you obviously do offer a really great membership, but you do also provide a huge amount of things that people can get involved in for free or for very little money, don't you?
Absolutely. So it's all on enterprisenation.com. And actually for the startups, we have our big startup show in January. So 23rd of January, we've got Startup 2021 UK. For any Irish listeners, we have Startup 2021 Ireland on the 29th of January, which we're very excited about. So yeah, for small businesses, it's all content is free to access on Enterprise Nation. So our kind of revenue model is advisors who are wanting to sell their services to small businesses, essentially kind of pay a listing fee, but all the content, there's heaps of e-learning, there's the daily lunch and learns with a big library, all of that is free to access.
Amazing. And can you just remind us where people can find you online? Obviously you've got your website, but I know you're very active on Twitter. So anywhere where we can find you online.
Yeah, so I'm at Emma L. Jones on Twitter. Twitter is definitely my social media platform of choice. I think it was probably this time a year ago where I set out a resolution to post every day on Instagram, and I think I followed it for 4 days and then stopped. So not so live on Instagram, but on LinkedIn, it's one of my resolutions for 2021 actually, is I really want to kind of try and do more on LinkedIn. But of course, I'm also very active on the Enterprise Nation platform, so connect with me there too.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Emma. That has been amazing.
Thank you for having me, Ria.